Hey vinyl community and all my music loving friends, it's MGK Boston Mike back with another video. Snowy day here in Metro West section of Boston, so I thought what better thing to do with my time, maybe make a video and showcase some of the stuff I picked up last Sunday. I went to a record show in a town called Dedham, Massachusetts, about half an hour south of here toward Providence, Rhode Island. I was there for 3 or 4 hours. It's the first show I've been to in ages. Now that I've got the bug again, there's one up in Burlington, Mass. I'm going to head to in April as well, just to follow up on the fun I had last Sunday. So it's the people watching, it's just the digging and finding good stuff. And last Sunday was no exception for both of those things. And it came out with a big bag of tricks. So I'm going to just show some of it. It was a pretty big pile. I'm a good digger and I'm a good deal maker. So let's celebrate some of those finds. So we'll kick it off. It's a mix of genres today. Bit of jazz, bit of rock, classic rock that is, and even some classic country thrown into the mix. So anyway, without further ado, we'll start in the jazz vein. It's Lourindo Almeida right here. He's a legendary bossa nova Brazilian guitarist. And here's Charlie Byrd, the American, also bossa nova being his main style of playing. Through the 60s, 70s, well into the 80s. He's, of course, long past now. But this was their first collaboration, these two gentlemen. It's just the two of them. No, sorry, it's a quartet. Milt Holland on percussion and a gentleman named Bob Magnuson on bass. This was the first outing, apparently, of 4 that they did. I'd never seen this before. I've mentioned in my previous videos, I'm a big fan of Charlie Byrd. I have a ton of his stuff. Wasn't aware of this. The duets featuring, well, it's a quartet, but the primary focus being on the dual guitars of Lourindo Almeida and Charlie Byrd. The release on this one, 1980. Mostly original compositions on here. Let's see, we got a Brazilian Soul, that's a good one. For Jeff, that's another Charlie Byrd composition. And Karaoke. This whole album's on YouTube, you could easily look it up. Let's see one on the inside here. Not familiar with this label. It's Concord Jazz Picante. Not familiar with it, but kind of a neat logo there. So anyway, yeah, Charlie Byrd, Lourindo Almeida. I listened to this once through, and it's really excellent. So again, like I said, this was the first of 4 outings for this quartet featuring the addition of Lourindo Almeida, and I will be seeking out the other 3 in that series. It went into the 80s. I think the 4th one came out in 1986. So following up on that, another Charlie Byrd. This is, of course, different quartet with this one. It's Charlie Byrd on guitar, Mario D'Arpino on, there's a flute player here, which is Mario D'Arpino. Gene Byrd on bass. Not sure if that was Charlie Byrd's brother. And William Reichenbach on drums. This is way earlier than that 1980 release that I just mentioned. This is in 1969. This is a promo copy for radio station only, apparently. It's in excellent condition. This one seller at the show, he dealt in estate sales, and he had a huge jazz collection from one of his clients, and this is where this stuff came from. And yeah, I got some great deals on these. Of course, yeah, it's on the Columbia label there. So some of the highlights on this one, see here, Bird of Paradise, how long has this been going on, and Let Go opens the album, which is the title track right there, and yeah, all good. I'm a big fan of, again, like I said, Charlie Byrd. Of course, there's just some beautiful model on the front like they used to do in the 60s. I guess it helped sell the records. Charlie Byrd wasn't a particularly attractive man, so she's nicer to look at, I guess. Anyway, still staying in the bossa nova vein. This is an album by a gentleman named George Shearing. George Shearing was originally from London, England, immigrated to the United States in the 40s, and after that period formed several quintets, and he was active well into the 1970s. This is the first album I was familiar with George Shearing. I didn't have any of his stuff, but again, I do love bossa nova. This one was released in 1963, and it should also be noted, it's interesting, George Shearing was born blind, and just kind of there he is on the back, because wearing his sunglasses, right? Just, but an overachiever on the piano, started playing when he was a child, and this is no exception. as far as to showcasing his abilities. So there's a couple of Antonio Carlos Jobim compositions. I've mentioned him previously, the Brazilian composer. And One Note Samba, you've heard that before. Stan Getz did that. And of course, Desafinato. It's been done by a number of people, again, including Stan Getz. So yeah, this is a nice collection here. It's the Shearing piano with woodwinds and Brazilian rhythm. Of course, there's the coffee behind here and the Brazilian model showcasing it. So George Shearing, Bossa Nova, release date on that one, 1963. Really excellent. If you like Bossa Nova, look up any George Shearing. You won't be disappointed. Still staying in the jazz vein, moving away from Bossa Nova. Those that watch my videos will know that I'm a big fan of jazz pianist Keith Jarrett. In this series, which began, I believe, in 1983. This is a trio with Gary Peacock on bass and, of course, Jack DeJohnette on drums. Jack DeJohnette, of course, played on this album behind me, Bitches Brew, the legendary jazz fusion album. That's just a poster from the Miles Davis album in 1969, 1970. And, of course, this was Keith Jarrett all through the 70s. He had his European quartet when he was living in Europe for a while. And this is back in the States, of course, with these other two gentlemen, Jack DeJohnette and Gary Peacock, as I noted, and here they are. They recorded 3 albums over a period of 2 months, as the story goes. The trio did. This was Keith's first return to doing an actual trio. When he first started out in the mid to late 60s, he was a trio guy. And then all through the 70s, of course, he had his European quartet, as I said, and a number of solo releases, of course, the legendary Cologne concert, where it's just him and the piano. But this, with the trio, it's really nice. And of course, it's standards, as the title suggests. There's Oscar Hammerstein thing, all the things you are. These are all, Billie Holiday and Arthur Herzog composition, God Bless the Child. It's been done by a number of people. That's why it's called standards. These are jazz standards. And of course, they're performed by the Keith Jarrett Trio. So this was volume 1 in the series. And there's 3. There's a volume 2. And there's the third in the series is called Changes. I do not have that. But as luck would have it, the same seller, again, I was talking about that guy with the estate sale stuff. I was able to get volume 2 as well. Of course, the cover's the same, only this time it's in blue, of course, with contrasting against the orange font there. And there's some original compositions on this one, actually. There's a Keith Jarrett composition called So Tender that kicks off side 1. Of the 2, I would say this is my preferred. I've only listened to them both, played through them. Again, I just bought these last Sunday, and I do work during the day most days. So I've made it through a listen of both of these, and definitely I prefer volume 2. It's just a more challenging listen. Keith Jarrett's a pretty complex player, and I enjoy this more than the first one. But again, they're both very good, and I will obviously play volume 1. Again, I expect several times in the years to come. But again, this is volume 2 in the series. And again, as I previously noted, I do not have changes, but I will be seeking that out. Again, when he got this trio together, they recorded all 3, volume 1, volume 2, and changes all within a 2-month period, sometime in 1983 in the United States. I'll spit that out. Still staying in the jazz vein, it's the great Stan Getz. Again, he's another player, sax player, the best in the business when he was alive, in my opinion. Just really terrific. He was coming off, this is 1963, and of course the title of this, Reflections. There he is, stretched out on the grass, having a smoke, and he's probably reflecting on his success at the time, because he was a pretty big name in the jazz world. Just music in general, his popularity was peaking at this point. So he'd come off the success of the Bossa Nova albums he did with Joe Gilberto. And this is more, when I was looking this up, and some critics panned this, said he was selling out. In my mind, this plays like a jazz pop album. So what I thought he was doing more here was just bridging, the complexities of jazz with pop music. So it's a really accessible album if you're not really into hardcore jazz. I call it hardcore jazz, but real jazz. This is more of an easy listening. Some critics even compared this album to like Burt Kaempfert, he was like the king of orchestral pop music in the 60s, and there's nothing wrong with Burt Kaempfert. I have several Burt Kaempfert records in my collection. In fact, I thought a theme that I may do down the road, I may do a whole video on orchestral pop from the 1960s featuring some of those band leaders. But again, this is a really enjoyable listen to me. Moonlight in Vermont kicks it off. That's excellent. Nighttime Street, that's a really good one. That features actually the guitar work, some guitar work on here on Nighttime Street of Kenny Burrell. I've mentioned Kenny Burrell too in a previous Jazz Tag video I did a month or two ago. Blowing in the Wind, he does a cover of the Bob Dylan song on here. Of course, these are all really short, 3 minutes, most of these cap out at. But yeah, this is a really good listen. And of course, Stan Getz, as he said, and everything I've read about is autobiographically, when he speaks about his playing, he was never one to repeat himself. So he was always trying new things. So this was his, like I said, attempt at sort of a, I would call it a pop jazz album, and embrace it because it is good. And yeah, jazz purists may dismiss it, but I'm a pretty open-minded guy and I really love it. So I pretty much like anything Stan Getz does. Even he got into even fusion in the 70s. The guy was so versatile, always trying new things. So again, Stan Getz Reflections, the name of that release. One more jazz for you. I think I mentioned Jimmy Smith a couple videos ago, legendary Hammond B3 organ player. This is a split album. I call it a split because there's selections on here by Jimmy Smith and then a gentleman named Dave Baby Cortez. I was not familiar. Just saw this, again, the same seller, and it's in really excellent condition. Not familiar with this label. It's called the International Award Series, but again, I'd say in very good near mint condition, the actual record itself. Gave it a listen through. So the two styles, the two men, as I said, Jimmy Smith and Dave Baby Cortez, both very similar style. I think Jimmy Smith, the more of an accomplished player. I don't know the reason for the two of them, this being a split album like this, but again, I got a good deal on it, and I love Jimmy Smith, so I picked it up. So it's split, like I said. The Jimmy Smith highlights for me is Jimmy's Jam Jam. I Can't Give You Anything But Love, and Little Parts Melody is nice. That's the Dave Cortez number there on side 2. It's kind of split half and half. It goes 2 songs, Jimmy Smith, and then it'll go over to Dave Cortez. And I don't know if they shared the same band on this. It doesn't say. The liner or the jacket doesn't. It's just kind of a promo for a bunch of other artists here. So this must have been a promo at the time. Couldn't find out much about it online, except what I've just noted. But again, Jimmy Smith, if you like B3 organ, really great stuff. I mean, Jimmy Smith, he's the king of that instrument, really. Okay, shifting gears and some psychedelic blues rock. Great Al Cooper and Mike Bloomfield, there they are on the cover. This is the live adventures of Al Cooper and Mike Bloomfield. This was released in 1969. Al Cooper, coming off the success of the Bloomfield Cooper Stills Super Session, was released the year prior in 1968, of course, with Stephen Stills, Al Cooper, and Mike Bloomfield, these two gentlemen here. That's a really good one if you want to look it up, Super Session. I have that. I've shown it before. But you definitely, if you like psychedelic blues rock, definitely seek that out. Again, this is what I would call a follow-up to it. It's interesting here on the bottom. It says Norman Rockwell. Don't know if Norman Rockwell painted this, but it looks like his kind of signature. And then there's an interesting story on the inside about how the project came together spearheaded by Al Cooper predominantly as the organizer. And you can see on the back here, recorded at Bill Graham's Fillmore Auditorium in San Francisco, and it was over a 3-night period. As the story goes, Mike Bloomfield, he stayed up for several nights, and he had to he was admitted to the hospital. He could not play the 3rd night. He was suffering from some kind of chronic insomnia. So not to worry, it's San Francisco. In came Carlos Santana and Alvin Bishop to fill in the blanks on the 3rd night. So yeah, it's just it's a mishmash of covers on here, blues standards. Of course, they do a great version of the band song, The Weight. What else? There's the cover here, the 59th Street Bridge song. Of course, that's a Paul Simon song, Feeling Groovy. They do a real cool version of that. Apparently, as the story goes, Paul Simon was actually a big fan of that cover. And they do a cover also here of Dear Mr. Fantasy. Of course, that's the Steve Winwood and Traffic composition. And let's just see on the inside, of course. Yeah, this is on Columbia. 2-record set, as I've noted. Yeah, just really good. The jacket looks a little banged up, but the records, it's a 2-record set. There goes my phone. Yeah, just it plays great. So yeah, I'm always a little leery when you see a jacket a little well used, but pulled it out and I looked at it and I got a really great price on this. I was able to haggle and I'm glad I did. And I really enjoy that. Anything really with Al Kooper, as I've mentioned before. I mean, the guy was everywhere. Multi-instrumentalist, super talented guy. Usually when you see the name Al Kooper associated with any project, it's definitely worth getting. So moving on. As I said, that was psychedelic kind of blues rock. This is straight up blues. It's, of course, the Great Albert King. This was released in 1977. Of course, it's King Albert by Albert King. Pretty polished compared to some of his earlier stuff, but still plays really great. Some of the highlights on here, of course, Love Shock kicks it off. What else on here? Yeah, Good Time Charlie does a version of that that's really good. Yeah, You Upset Me, Baby. That's probably the highlight on this album for me. A little short, could have jammed out a little longer. Most of these songs, this is a studio album. They all clock in around 4.5, 5 minutes. Of course, there's the Great Albert King right there. And of course, the man and his guitar. So again, 1977, the release on that. King Albert, certainly not his best, but I'll keep that and it won't go in my reject pile. Got it for a great price. And I'm a big Albert King fan, so yeah, it'll hit the turntable a couple more times, I would expect, over the years. Totally shifting gears here to 80s, some 80s alternative modern rock, if you will. This is a band called Screaming Blue Messiahs. They're out of the UK, fronted by this gentleman here, lead guitarist, vocalist Bill Carter. I have this album, Gunshy. This is their debut. This was released, what's the release date on this one? 86, the release date on this one. These guys, I would call them kind of a post-punk rockabilly. I don't know, maybe, I don't even know who I'd compare these guys to. There's a band from Australia called the Hoodoo Gurus. These guys kind of fall into that camp, I'd say. Some of the highlights on this one. Wild Blue Yonder kicks it off. That was a big single from this when it came out. I had a recording of this on a cassette. I used to record albums from friends back in my high school, university days in the 80s. And I had a cassette copy of this somewhere I'd recorded, but all my cassettes, it's a sad story. They melted in my garage when we lived out in California. So I don't have my cassettes anymore. But anyway, staying on point here. Some of these others on here, Killer Born Man, President Kennedy's Smile, President Kennedy's Mile, rather, not Smile. So this is a really solid debut. These guys must have been really great live. Of course, here they are on the Elektra label right there. Love the Elektra logo. So many great bands on that label. One of my favorites, of course, being The Doors. So again, yeah, that's Gunshy. That was the debut. Again, the band Screaming Blue Messiahs. I encourage you to look that up. This is a follow-up again. This is a compact disc copy of their follow-up album. This is called Bikini Red. This came out in 87. You can see on the back. So it's property of yours truly here from the CD library of Mike Kelly. This is all good. There's a really good video for a song in here called I Want to Be a Flintstone. Of course, talking about the old Flintstones cartoon. Bikini Red, the title track, is excellent. Sweetwater Pools, All Shook Down. I mean, there's really not a bad track on this. This is actually better than the debut that I just showed, but they're both really solid. But if I had to pick of the first two, this would be it. And they did have a third release after this, which I do not have, and the name escapes me. And then they just, boom, faded into obscurity. One of those bands, I think if they made a comeback, there'd definitely be an audience for it. Here's some photos on the inside of the CD. But yeah, that was their follow-up. Again, Bikini Red. The band Screaming Blue Messiahs, not to be missed. Look them up. As I described them again, kind of a post-punk rockabilly. Like if you like X, there's another one. You might dig this. So I'm not being very good for continuity today. I'm jumping around with the genres, but anyway, what the hell? Variety's the spice of life. So back onto the jazz theme here. There's Astrid Gilberto. Of course, collaborated with Stan Getz on the Bossa Nova album in 1963, the world famous Girl from Ipanema. That's her. the Brazilian princess. Wonderful voice. And also from Brazil, organ player Walter Wanderley. There's Walter right there. He's the band leader. I have a few Walter Wanderley albums in my collection. Again, it's samba bossa nova style, and he was from Brazil, Walter Wanderley and his trio. Of course, later he relocated to Los Angeles, and that's where he stayed until his death and played into the 70s. He died quite young. I believe he died in his early 50s. This release is 1966, the release on this one. Yeah, and again, Astrid Gilberto with Walter Wanderley. Some of the track. This is a Antonio Carlos Jobim composition. It's called So Nice Summer Samba. Of course, that was on the Stan Getz release with Astrid Gilberto that I just mentioned. And here's the other personnel that are on the band in the trio. And yeah, this is really great. This is one of those albums, if you're in a kind of a crappy mood and you put this on, if it doesn't cheer you up, I'd say there's no hope for you. It's just really wonderful. It's happy. It's just a really pleasant listen. It's short. Every track on this, again, it's about 2.5, 3 minutes. But the first two, so the album's called, again, A Certain Smile, A Certain Sadness. And it kicks off with those two songs kick it off. Of course, track one, A Certain Smile. Track two, A Certain Sadness. And again, as I said, So Nice Summer Samba. Here's That Rainy Day. That's not an original. These are all covers. But again, I got this from the same guy, the same jazz seller. Of course, they were on the Verve label. Walter Wanderley was. And she has a really amazing voice. Interesting side note, trivia with Astrid Gilberto. Around 1990 rather, there was a series of albums called Red, Hot, and Blue, and they were to benefit for AIDS research, and a lot of artists got on board with it. Compilation albums, sort of in the same vein as like Live Aid for Ethiopian famine relief, only it was all money for AIDS research to help people out when that terrible disease was flying around at that time. And she did a duet, Desafinato, which is not on this, which is an Antonio Carlos Jobim composition. Of course, the Brazilian composer. Anybody into jazz has heard of him. She does a really great version of that with George Michael, the late, great George Michael, pop superstar that he was. Again, that's released in 1990, Red, Hot, and Blue. I do have that on a CD copy somewhere. Didn't dig that out, but you can seek that out on YouTube. Again, Astrid Gilberto and George Michael doing an excellent version of Desafinato. I encourage you to seek that out. But again, right back to this. Of course, it's Astrid Gilberto, Walter Wanderley Trio. There's the trio, and of course, there's Astrid, 1966. And this is really just in really excellent condition. I couldn't be more thrilled to get this. Of course, here's just the promo on the inside. And again, it's one of those jazz snobbery gets in the way sometimes, and some people would dismiss. There's, of course, the Verve logo. Walter Wanderley, was kind of a lounge lizard guy, but that's not me. I think he's terrific, and I think the music's fun and exciting, and just real pleasant to listen to when you're in the mood for it. Moving on here, going into a little classic rock. This is Great Alvin, of course, of the Allman Brothers Band, piano player, keyboard player, singer. This is his first solo album. This came out in 1973. Of course, it's called Laid Back, and there he is, looking pretty laid back. And on the back, just some cool cover art. I don't know what's going on there. It almost looks, yeah, it's a volcano explosion. That's not very laid back, is it? But here he is on the inside, on horseback. I don't know who the woman is. A friend of Great Alvin's at the time, I would assume. And yeah, here's the other members of his band. Of course, this was his first solo album, as I noted. He's just such a really great singer. And this was kind of a departure from the Allman Brothers Band at the time. This is, again, it's called Laid Back. Well, it plays like almost like a singer-songwriter album. It's not like an Allman Brothers album, but there's, again, he's such a great vocalist that doesn't matter. It stands out on its own. There's everything on here. Again, like I said, singer-songwriter style, but he also, there is a cover on here, in fact, of Midnight Rider, and that's an Allman Brothers song. And then there's, a traditional spiritual number on here. Will the Circle Be Unbroken? That's a gospel song, well known. Most people would know that, well, from the period. But anyway, done by a number of people, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? But he does just a really excellent version of it. And All My Friends is another one on here that I really like. So yeah, again, nice gatefold sleeve on this. I was really happy to see this. Again, the sleeve looks a little well worn, but the record itself, plays really great. I just listened to this last night, and I'm excited to have it. I had, again, a cassette copy I'd recorded from somebody years ago. But yeah, I'm glad to get this back into the collection. I'm a huge Allman Brothers Band fan. Saw them for the first time in the mid-90s, and following that, I saw them half a dozen times across venues in Toronto, and then later when we relocated to Boston, I saw them here a couple times as well. Of course, different with Warren Haynes, Derek Trucks. The personnel changes over time with the band, but yeah, glad I did do that. Brother of Greg Allman, the late great, of course, the super guitarist that he was, Duane Allman. Of course, Duane Allman deceased in a motorcycle crash in his hometown of Macon, Georgia, unfortunately in 1971 as a very young man. This was Anthology Volume 1. It doesn't say that, but there is a Volume 2. And of course, Duane Allman, outside of his work with the Allman Brothers Band, of course, playing lead guitar, well, dual guitars with Dickie Betts. Here you can just see some of the other guys that played with him on this, with Duane. He does, again, there's a couple of guys like Barry Oakley's on this from the Allman Brothers Band, and a bunch of other session guys. Of course, this was all recorded at the Muscle Shoals Studios. And yeah, it opens up with this cool B.B. King medley. Of course, and there's also a version of Statesboro Blues. That's an Allman Brothers song. But again, some of his own stuff, some blues standards on here. Just really good. I was glad to find this. And, you know, I was looking for it, actually. And I got lucky finding it that day because probably about a year ago, I purchased this one. This is Anthology Volume 2. I just thought I'd show this in the context of, you know, following up on Volume 1. Again, they called this Volume 2. This was released posthumously after his death in 1973. And everybody is on this. I mean, Wilson Pickett on vocals, Otis Rush is on this. Of course, the great guitarist and vocalist that he was. Ronnie Hawkins is on this. Yeah, it's just a showcase of Eric Clapton's on this. I mean, anybody. Oh, gosh, technical difficulties with my phone today. I apologize for that. There. Of course, here's a nice gatefold sleeve, and you can see a bunch of the guys on stage. And of course, there's Duane Allman right there down in front. I encourage you, if you're an Allman Brothers fan, seek out this solo stuff. It's really worthwhile. Duane Allman, of course, was just such a brilliant guitar player, and he was a session player in his own right, playing with other people at the time, outside of the Allman Brothers Band, and he was really in-demand player at the time. Again, his short life, unfortunately. So, shifting gears, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I would be going across a few different genres, and here we are with a little classic country and western. It's the queen of country music herself, the great Tammy Wynette. Arguably, I'd say this is probably her best release of the 1970s, and it kicks off the 70s because it was released in 1970. Of course, as I've noted in previous videos, anything produced by Billy Sherrill at the time. He was a huge name in Nashville. He had the string section behind him. It almost just brought a whole element, you know, took the honky-tonk out of it. Beautiful steel guitars. And then, you know, a wall of acoustic guitar behind that, and of course more strings with violin, etc. And of course backup singers being the Jordanaires, who actually sang with Elvis Presley as well. There they are. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, the Jordanaires. And this is 1970, again, as I noted. So she's just such a terrific singer. Can do no wrong for the most part in my mind. Cold Lonely Feelings, really good. He Loves Me All the Way. I don't know if she was singing about George Jones, possibly. Lighter Shade of Blue. It's a nice slow one on here. But again, notes on the back here. I like this on the back. You'd always get these descriptive things. After listening to this fine selection of songs, which was produced by Billy Sherrill, a man who definitely knows a special touch and a special sound when he hears it. So, of course, it's Tammy's touch. And this guy says he finds that Tammy has displayed a touch of loneliness, a touch of happiness, a touch of needing and longing, and by all means, a special touch of warmth and sincerity. So Tammy's Touch, released on that 1970. I should show one other thing here since we're on the topic. So as I mentioned, Billy Sherrill, the producer, and I have in previous videos, usually when I'm on the topic of any kind of classic country and western, he recorded a lot of his albums with artists in the classic RCA Studio B. Of course, RCA Studio A was in New York City, but Studio B was the country and western arm of RCA in Nashville. So this is just a pamphlet. So you can see the Country Music Hall of Fame logo in the center. I just thought this would be interesting to show. Back in 2012, when we were in Nashville, I did the full Country Music Hall of Fame. I encourage you to see that. It's really good. It's on par with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, which I've visited twice over the years. But it was really worthwhile. And they had a side bus you could take for an extra fee for a personal tour of RCA Studio B, and got in there, and it was really, really informative. And yeah, if you're a real true believer in the classic country and western stuff, and you find yourself in Nashville, you really should make your way to RCA Studio B. It's well worth the trip. Glad I did that. Really great music memory. Rounding out today's video, trying to keep it around 30 minutes, and I think I'm just hitting over that. Of course, the Great Alvin Lee and 10 Years After. This is a double live album, recorded, let's see here, I believe it was recorded over 4 nights across venues in Amsterdam and in Rotterdam, Holland. So of course you can see the track listing. One of These Days is one of my favorite 10 Years After compositions. Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. What else is on here? Classical, no, not Classical Thing, that's just a short intro. Yeah, I Can't Keep From Crying. That's an Al Cooper song. It's on one of the record 3, I believe. So yeah, again, recorded live. Here they are on the inside. Not great photos, but of course featuring Alvin Lee, lead vocalist and lead guitarist. Just an excellent player. I believe they're still somewhat active today. They were out of the UK originally, but you can see on the inside they were on Columbia, recorded live. Again, double album set. Got a great deal on this too. I wasn't even familiar with this album, and I've got a bunch of 10 Years After stuff. This is actually the 3rd live album they'd done. They'd been active at this point since the mid to late 60s. Of course, as I noted, a release date on this one again, 1973, and you can see the mixing board there on the back. But yeah, double album set, Amsterdam and Rotterdam. So again, 10 Years After, recorded live. So that was a really enjoyable record show, as I noted at the beginning of the video. And again, I'm going to check out another one in the month of April. There's another one nearby here, so I'll be going to that one. So I always keep a list handy, and I've got my want list. And yeah, it was great. I was in this place, lost track of time, didn't look at the clock, got out to the car. I'd been in there for 3 hours and 20 minutes, but it was well worth it. I came out with a lot of great stuff, and that's just some of it. I could probably do a volume 2 to this video. I picked up that many records last Sunday, and I may just do that. Anyway, I hope you all have a great weekend. Well, I'm going to get some more shoveling in the driveway this afternoon, unfortunately. We had quite a bit of snow overnight here in Metro West Boston. So again, hope everybody's doing well, and I'll see you soon.